mid first page. So the keyword competitive is going to show up here after it calculates all this. That's 57. Now anything under 30 or around 30 is pretty good. So what was that other one we did? It was cooking games for kids. This one had, I think it was 30. So 30 is a lot easier than 57. And what's cool here is if you wanted to, if you're going to use KC or keyword competitiveness as a way to determine whether that's a potential keyword you should explore even further, you can actually go through each of these really quickly by just clicking here on calculate the average KC. And it'll take like 5 seconds or so. And I usually click 5 at a time. I don't want to do too many and overload the system. But what it's going to do is going to go into that competitor analysis thing for you and find the keyword competitiveness number. So here we go, 58, 46. House cleaning is 39, which is a little bit less competitive. So as you can see here, the least competitive out of these 5 is house cleaning, but there are more local searches than for house cleaning services. So house cleaning would definitely be a better keyword to go for than house cleaning services, interestingly enough. But again, this is in the high 30s. I would shoot for something under 30 if possible, maybe mid 30s if you're ambitious. And yeah, this is just what I would do. So let's do this again. Let's create a new campaign just to see if we can find something. And I'm going to run through this until I find a good one to show you just what it looks like. So I'm just going to add a new campaign. So NSD 2.0 wave 2, and keep all that the same. Create campaign. I'm going to go to campaign settings and keywords. And actually, I'm just going to start with one that I know has some interesting data for, because I want to speed things up a bit. So I'm going to put in wedding rings here. And I'm going to put in exact and apply the same filters that we had before. 3,000 and 100,000 max for local searches, average CPC of 1.0 generate keywords. It's going to fetch that data for wedding rings. And again, you want to put in 5 seed keywords so you can get the maximum number of keywords and related terms in there as possible, so you can pick up more dirt and find those keywords. But I'm just doing this for the purposes of speeding things up a bit, because there is some interesting data here that I want to show you. Whether you have Longtail Platinum or Pro, this is you're going to start to discover why some things are more competitive than others. Okay, so here were the results, and if you're using the Platinum version, a quick thing to do is even as these are generating, you can just click on the average KC calculate here to get that number and see if any of them stand out or are relatively low. Again, 30 or below is something to pay attention to for the purposes of the niche site duel here. And the reason it doesn't calculate them all at once for you is because it takes a little bit of work for the system to do, and I think Spencer just didn't want to have things overload. And so I'm just going to calculate the rest of these really quick, and you start to see some stand out here. I mean, there's some in the 40s and mid 30s, which are going to be, somewhat competitive. And there are some down here like this one for vintage wedding rings, which is 26, which is definitely the lowest one we've seen in a while. And I want to explore that really quick. So I'm going to click on vintage wedding rings. And, a lot of my friends are getting married, both male and female right now. I know the whole vintage wedding thing is huge right now. So this could be a good potential keyword to get into, but we want to explore it a little bit more. Now, the average keyword competitiveness is 26. Now, you might not know that if you don't have the Pro version, but there's certain things I want to show you that kind of show you why this is less competitive than some of the other ones. And it's because, first of all, look at the URL and title here. What Longtail Pro or Platinum does is it bolds, just like Google does, it bolds the actual keywords in the URL and title. And by looking at this, you don't actually see very many sites here in the top 10, or any of them actually targeting specifically vintage wedding rings. So they're not paying attention or utilizing on-page SEO very well, and that's something that you could do and take advantage of in this particular niche if you wanted to get into it. Now, looking at the page, especially up here at the top, 53, 54, 46, again, we were shooting for under 30, and there was some of that here in the sort of mid-range on the first page, 24, 28, 29. But there's a couple things I also want you to show. That's just one thing you have to pay attention to. There's a lot of page links here, but you also notice that a lot of these, like for example, this one here, which is 1,282 page links, there's only 46 juice page links. So not very many are that authoritative. And looking at all the juice page links here, there's only one site to be kind of scared of here, which is this one. But there are other ones linking above it, and that might have to do with the content or what's on that page. And looking at that, it's just, I don't see anything that says vintage wedding rings on that particular URL or title. So that's a big mistake for that site if it wanted to actually target this particular keyword. Also, look at the Moz rank. It's relatively low to what we've seen already. The first one here is pretty high, 6.22. That's about as high as Smart Passive Income right now. But then there's a lot of them in the mid threes. Down here below for K and Zales, it's just in the one. It's below 2, and that's definitely the lowest we've seen so far. So that's why the keyword competitiveness is 26. So again, this just shows you that there's everything here you have to pay attention to, not just the numbers, but also the URL and the titles and how people are utilizing on-page SEO. And then if you're using Platinum, there's a KC or keyword competitiveness sort of column for that particular, or for these particular websites that it's showing next to. So I'm going to go back to keyword research and see if I can find anything interesting about any of these other ones that are going on. There's also one here, wedding rings for women, which is, actually has more local searches and a higher CPC at just a little higher KC than what we just looked at for vintage wedding rings. So I'm going to click on that just to sort of see what I can deduce from doing this. And when you're first starting out, looking at this matrix, and it's going to be very confusing. And just know that I went through the same thing. And the more you do this, the more you're going to get used to it. And there's a few things that stand out here, and that is just the relatively low number of juice page links that are pointing to each of these sites. I mean, 00, 42, 03, 101. That's very low, and that just shows you that you can potentially outrank a lot of these sites here, which do have a lot of page links, but they're not very authoritative, the links that are pointing to those sites. So if you get some good links coming to your site, that's gonna mean a lot. The page authority is sort of all over the place here. You got low 30s all the way up to 73. This top one might be something to be scared of. And if you look and open up titles, you're going to see a lot more bold lettering here, which is a sign that they are utilizing on-page SEO quite a bit. The Moz rank is just sort of average, some zeros, but mostly in the 4 to 5 range. But then the page rank is relatively low. So again, this is a potential, and if you were totally into wedding rings for women and you could crush it, it might be worth getting into. But it might be also worth trying to look for other keywords that may be in the mid-20s as far as KC is concerned, or might show you, and it might be more obvious when you look at the data that there is some room there. So I'm going to go back to keyword research, and I'm going to go back to my campaign settings. I'm going to delete wedding rings, and I'm going to type in something else, and we're just going to see what comes up. Okay, so I'm going to type in a few things that are closely related to each other, and that is certification, license, board exam, and also permit. Now, these are things that people might have to potentially apply for, is what I'm getting at. And maybe that's a good one, apply for. And I'm going to click add, and I guess we'll see what comes up. Okay, so here are the results, and I've already calculated the average KC by clicking on the calculate button that was over here on the right-hand side, which took quite a bit of time because there's a lot of keywords here. As you can see on the bottom, there's over 3,500 keywords that have been sort of filtered out, and I'm seeing 133 here that meet our criteria. Now, what's cool is you can sort of sort each of these columns so you can get high, low for each of these things. So I'm doing that right now with average KC. So I'm seeing the lowest average keyword competitiveness right now keyword, which is TABC certification. I don't know what that is, but I'm going to explore it because it's already met the criteria and it shows me that it's something to pay attention to. If I didn't have Pro, I would eventually come onto this and see the following. I would see a lot of sites here that have TABC certification in the URL, which is not always a bad sign. And you can see here, this one, for example, tabccertification.com, that's almost obviously a particular niche site that someone else has created, or it's just the actual company that does this or whatever it is. But you can see here that that particular website is ranking number 3, right behind a sort of government or state site, and it only has a very low page authority, very little page links, and not much going on with it. There's other ones that are about TABC permits and online TABC certification, which have relatively low page authority in the 20s, page links in the 10s and 20s, zero juice page links. And this is why, again, the competitiveness is 23. And then, so if you were interested in this, whatever it may be, and you feel like you could build a good resource for this and create something better than what exists already, and obviously you want to go to each of these sites and also type it into Google. And actually, let's do that. Let's type this into Google, and you'll see that you'll see what happens when you type it into Google. You'll actually find that TABC is the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission, and what they do is they provide permits and licenses to sell alcohol in your establishment. If I were to go to google.com and type in TABC certification, I would get an ad, which is a good sign. Not very many ads, but then I'd see the same sort of websites that were here that are in Longtail Pro. So, since this is something to do with selling alcohol and beverages, alcoholic beverages, that's not really something I would want to get into. But if, maybe you live in Texas and maybe you have a business that sells alcohol and your business is thriving because of that, I don't know. This might be a good keyword for you, but I'm going to move on. But it just shows you that there is a lot of random things out there that you might be able to find, and you'll have to see and assess whether or not that's something you want to get into. Now, there's another one here with the average KC of 30, which is driver license check. I'm not even sure what that really means, but looking at the data here, I can see, relatively mid-level page authority. I mean, the top-ranking site has page authority at 33, very little page links. The most page links here on this particular set of results here is 234. The Moz ranks from 0 to, the top one is 1.64. There's 1 in the 5 range, so this is a good sign that there's room here. I mean, look at the juice page links. Nothing above 10. So if you wanted to rank for driver's license check, and going back here, it looks like there's 9,900 people doing local searches each month for that. I don't even know what that means exactly. Does that just information about how people check your driver's license? Maybe if you're getting carded for something, or how to make sure it's legit. I don't know, but I could see a lot of different states, Washington and Texas here. So I don't know how you might want to tackle this, or where it would come and fit into play as far as writing 50 posts about this. Maybe it's about driver's license checks in each of those 50 states, and maybe you could dominate it through that. What is the sort of, the capability of earning an income from this niche? I don't know. We'd have to do some checks in Google for that. There's also Texas teacher certification, which also has a keyword competitiveness of 30. And if you were to, the relatively low amount of local searches compared to these other ones, but a higher CPC. So it might be worth it, especially if that's something you're interested in. Maybe you're a teacher in Texas. And so you can see the Moz rank here is relatively sort of low to mid-range. The top 5 in Google are between 1 and 4. Page links, not too bad. Page authorities, kind of mixed. And I think the on-site competitiveness you can see down here, actually a good place to start would be these sites down here in the bottom that are obviously targeting this to those sites, seeing how authoritative they are. You can see the juice page links for those sites aren't very authoritative at all. So it might be something to get into. And again, this is really what keyword research is all about. I'm just going to go into here and see if I get a good feeling on any of these, see where there might be room for something else that I might be interested in. Currently, any of these that I found, I'm not really interested in, so I'm going to keep going. But this is where I'm going to end the video, just to kind of show you that, this isn't going to come easy. And I'm still working on finding my keyword right now. I have a few potentials. Some of the potentials that I'm really actually interested in as a topic are a lot more competitive than I want them to be, but it still may be a keyword that I want to tackle, showing that, it's okay if it's a little bit competitive as long as you could bring something new to the game. So I might end up challenging myself in that way, but we'll see what some of the other